Welcome, Rob Wall, to the Bridge Podcast. This is exciting to have you here. Really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Dan. I look forward to it, and it's pretty exciting. I've watched a few of your other ones, so it's good to see what's out there.
Awesome, awesome. Thanks so much. So you've got vast experience in safety. You've been at the job for 30 plus years, correct?
Yes, I have through different areas. I've been through the oil and gas industry. I started out with a company by the name of Lafarge in Lethbridge, and then I went up, like I say, through the oil and gas in Fort McMurray and stuff like that. Lots of experience with like volunteer fire departments. I was an auxiliary police officer for a little over 13 years, so I got a lot of good experience that helped me in the safety field.
I'll bet you. Well, especially with that police and firework, you're dealing with EMS stuff too, so emergency situations and people in tragedy. So
Yeah,
probably.
you know,
What can I ask you? What where did you find your passion for this? Like, why? Obviously you want to help people. That's from everything you've said so far. That's easy to tell. So how did you become passionate about that?
well, I was involved with the fire department on the fire and ambulance side of things, and at the time I was working with Lafarge, and that was in probably the early '80s, and things were just starting to kick off in the safety world, and companies were being required to get safety training and that in place. And my manager at that time come to me and he said, I want you to be a safety guy for our company. You got a good background in the medical field and the firefighting field, so I think you'd be good. You do a good training and that, because we were already doing toolbox talks and that. So I decided, yeah, I would get involved with it. They sent me up through the Alberta Construction Association to do all their courses and get my NCSO and that kind of stuff. So that was basically my kickoff to the safety side of things.
And what year was that roughly?
Probably was 1987.
Yeah, yeah. It's well, that's exciting. So, what's the source of your inspiration for the work you do? Like, where does your passion come from?
I just like helping people, and I like problem solving. I'm one of those that I don't believe in taking the problems to other people if you can't. Try to solve them yourself first, and work with your people in the field and that kind of stuff. So I enjoy that. I enjoy leading teams of safety people and managing big projects. Most of my projects in the last 25 years have been major projects. So, it's interesting to see them from the ground up and see what their final results are and, what the money can buy and that.
So, give us an idea of size of project. So when you say mega projects, like for people that are watching that have never been out west and seen these things, what are we talking about for people size and what kind of structures?
I was on probably the biggest one I'd been on was Curl Lake. It was an Imperial Oil Sands project. And we were staffed at max there. We had 10,000 people on site. And cost wise, I think we came in just under $20 billion. Then we went over, I did the MLMR project for Syncrude. It was a mine relocation. That project there, we had 3,500 people on site. It was a 4.5 year project. And we looked at about $3.5 billion there. And then just now I'm on the Site C Dam project. And it's just in its final stages. We probably got a year left, a year and a half left. And we're looking at about $16 billion there. So those are the
It's
big
a lot of
bucks.
money and a lot of people, eh?
Yeah, the BC Hydro Dam there, at peak we had 4,800 people. So you see a lot of people, a lot of different things go on. It's all camp life, so people are away from their homes, usually 2 weeks on, 1 week off. So you deal with a lot of personal issues and that kind of stuff too. As a safety person, you see a lot of different things, a lot of dynamics that make everybody in, each individual their own person out there.
Would you feel like there's been a substantial difference in the personal issues you're dealing with now versus 5 years ago?
Oh, definitely. And the other thing is, society has highlighted them too, which has helped a lot. Before people would just struggle with them and you'd find a lot of, guys return to drugs and alcohol to try to cope with them. Whereas now there's support systems out there and that kind of stuff. But, and I mean, times have changed and there's a lot of home pressures that come with them and that. And then, like I say, you take somebody away from their family for, 2 weeks. That's a big change for a person. It is a real lifestyle shift.
Absolutely. I did 6 years of cross the country shuffle with Shell. So I was doing from Halifax to Peace River and Halifax to Albion Sands. So actually I was on the same I was on some of the same buses as you as you're going up Curl Lake, I'm sure, or at least we were driving back past each other at one point.
Yeah, loading
It
up
is a
at
different,
Albion.
yeah, down at, yeah, you would have shifted at Albion, right?
Yeah, that's where we flew out of was Albion Oil Sands.
I think at the end they were flying you guys out of Albion, and we had to go to town. And everybody was all irritated about it. So
Welcome to the oil sands, eh?
yeah, exactly, exactly. It's just people shuffling. When you talk about 10,000 people on a project, I mean it's like a small city, you
Yeah,
know, and
definitely.
everybody's going to work. Well, I guess there's night shifts too, but there's so many people going to work first thing in the morning.
Yeah, well, and that, you look at like Pearl, they were running 100 buses to site, and that's coaches, so 50 plus people on each coach. So it was quite a thing to watch, even in the mornings when they would load those buses, and how organized it was, and the dangers of people walking to those buses. So you had to make sure nothing was moving while the people were on the ground and that. So they did a real good job of setting that up and making sure everybody was looked after.
It's funny. There's always criticism about huge companies and does I'm not even oil fields or anywhere else, right? But when you're dealing with that many people and making sure they're safe and making sure that it's actually effective, the organization factor is just it's people have no idea how much goes into it. Even the guys working there, I think sometimes.
Yeah, and how it can change. You could set something up one day and it changes in the next day because circumstances change, product changes, they can't get supplies or something like that. Or we dealt with forest fires going through things like that. So there's a whole bunch of change. Every day is a different day, and that's a nice thing about safety. There's never, the next day is not never going to be the same as the day you just went through. There's always going to be something that you can learn or something you can pick up.
Totally. So speaking of change, what has changed since the beginning? So since like 30 years, well, I guess 87, that's a long time ago. What do you feel like some of the things that have changed for the better since you started?
I think the way that corporations and companies and people look at safety on its own. Back in '87, when I first started, it was, oh yeah, we need a safety guy. You're going to be the token safety guy. Go do the courses so that we can check the box. There was not a real lot of commitment from management, and that was probably why I was real lucky. My manager was committed to it, and he knew what was coming. So he supported whatever we needed to do. But I think what you see today is you see that top down mentality right from the senior executives, right, realizing that they need to have safety, and it does pay. If you have a good safe project, it'll be on time and it'll be within cost, and that we proved it at the MLMR project.
Mm-hmm.
Like you say, we ran that there, and we had low number of incidents. We had no lost time incidents. And we had 10 million man hours, and we kept the cost down, and we came in under budget, and we came in sooner than we were supposed to for time wise.
So then people were taking safe production seriously. And
Yeah,
that's
and people wanted to come work there. We had no problem getting top notch people because they'd heard what the project was like. They heard that the camps were good and that people were being treated well. So they wanted to come work, and that's half the battle with it nowadays.
you mentioned your manager was really big on safety when you first started. Was there a story there? Was there like what drives people to really care about safety when there's nothing pointing them that, like before the legislation, before the rules, before all that stuff?
I think with my manager that he realized that safety was coming in. He knew what it could do, and he totally had bought into what this the whole economy was looking at and that kind of stuff, and what everybody was looking at was safety. And he was always a leader, no matter what we did. He always wanted to be forefront. He wanted to be involved. He wanted us involved with the ACSA. He wanted us involved with Safety City and that kind of stuff in Lethbridge and things like that. So he always wanted to be involved with safety and pushing it, even down, like I say, to Safety City, where it was kids and that we were involved with. We built a building there. We donated for it and that kind of stuff, and got the contractors in place and that. And it was always Lafarge and the manager was always the front leaders of it. So that was a big help for me.
That's huge. That top down safety is the only way you can be successful as a safety advisor, safety as a safety man, right? Like you can't do it without the support of the headman,
No,
right?
exactly. If you don't have that, it's an uphill battle, and you're never going to win it. Excuse me.
What kind of errors have you seen in terms of maybe communication breakdowns, that kind of thing, throughout the years? I mean, there's been a lot of obviously good work done because we've done a lot of good work and there's been a lot of things happen. But what issues have we overcome? I guess.
I think one of the biggest mistakes I see, and we're still living some of it, is that probably back in the early 2010, 2015 era where it was real busy out there in the workforce and that we were just throwing everybody into safety. And people would come in, they go get their courses at the ACSA or, the other organizations that were out there, the metal fabs and that, and all of a sudden they thought they were safety people, and they come out there into the field and we popped them in, usually at a real high rate of pay because it was the oil sands at that time. And all of a sudden they became, this is the norm. And today we're struggling with that because that's not the norm anymore. Wages have come down and, there's an abundance of people out there. So, you're seeing that. And I think what, we should have looked at, and I know when I was with the ACSA, I used to always say we should look at it as being an apprenticeship style program where you would get your training, then you'd have to put so many years in the field along with a safety professional and that and learn. And I think that's probably the biggest mistake that we've made in the safety industry is we just overproduced safety people when it was booming, and now we just look at, we got a lot of people out there that have got some training, but they don't have that field experience. And, that's for a safety person, that's the hardest thing to have is, you got good training because you've got your classrooms and that, but you just don't have that field experience on how to deal with the workers. And then to management, there's that gap you always have to try to close as a safety person.
That gap between the safety person and the workers. So
Yeah,
then there's obviously a disconnect then if they don't have the experience, in terms of respect, in terms of communication, right?
yeah, you got a safety person that's real young, never worked a lot in the field, might not even have done a field job, yet they're now coming into a heavy construction major project as a safety person or safety lead, without that field experience. And it's tough. It's really tough. You eat a lot of them up. You see them come in, they'll spend a week or two, and then they're usually gone.
Yeah. I remember a young guy coming in and he wanted to go out to the field. He's like, let's go out and get some interventions. And it's like, well, wait a minute. How about we go create some relationships? How about we go and talk to some people, right?
Yeah. Yeah, as
Yeah.
a safety guy, you need that relationship. If you haven't got the relationship in the field with the workers, you're, like I say, it's going to be a long day for you on a 12-hour shift.
Oh, Rob, I'll tell you, I used it as an excuse to smoke for years. Go hang out in the smoke pit, man. It was part of my job,
Yeah, but that's where you get the best information.
100% it is, 100%. And that's where they know that you're just a dude.
Yeah.
You're just out there talking because they're just all taking a break. Right? Is there something we need to see more of in the industry?
I think we need to see a real good, strong observation type program to get ahead of the game instead of chasing it after. The observation programs, and I mean, I've dealt with a lot of different ones out there. They end up being something that the company wants to use as a marker. So you end up going for quantity instead of quality. So you're getting, all these people putting in observation cards of hazards they're seeing or things they're seeing, yet they're not catching the real hazards that are out there. And yet, if somebody could develop a real strong program that went after the hazards and recognized those before they became an incident or a near miss in the field, I think that would be something that, we really need to develop on and work on.
But is it a training thing or is it a systems thing?
It's probably a little bit of both. We're not that great at training people. We bring them in, we do a quick orientation, we jam a whole lot into them in the first day, and then we send them out there, and they're expected to follow along and know the programs and that. With usually, you don't give them a lot of guidance in that. I think, and the other side of it is a systems thing. As I say, companies look at, okay, if I can get 1,000 of these cards turned in, I'm meeting a mark of having a great program out there. But when you look at it, out of that 1,000, you might only have, 50 or 60 that are really good cards that are bringing something to the table. A lot of them will be something that, is just, it's something so they can fill the card in and get through it. The other thing that I look at too is a lot of it is some people will use that reporting system or that observation program as I see a hazard, I report it, now it's somebody else's problem. We got to get a lot of people start thinking that if I see that hazard, that's my problem. I need to fix it. And if I can't, then I get help. Because by the time you go to get help in that, it could become an incident or a near miss.
Well, to keep it really simple, if you see a tripping hazard, and you report it instead of picking it up, then it's not, you're not serving your purpose.
Yeah, and we struggle with that. There's a lot of people out there that, well, that's not my job.
Yeah.
And I still hear it today, well, that's a safety person's job, send it to safety. But
What would you like to see less of?
I'd like to see less of the, I call it cop mentality, where you're going to go out there and let's go out there and find something, let's go out there and see if we can catch somebody doing something wrong. That's not what our job is. Our job is to be there to coach and mentor people, and if you see something going wrong, your job then is to work with them so that you can, point out to them what is wrong and what do they need to do to correct it. But the other thing that I always caution people with is don't always assume it's wrong. We don't know everything as safety people. So, you've got to take that mentality where you go up to the person and you say, okay, what are you doing? And maybe get them to explain their job. And as they're explaining it, if they're doing something wrong, a lot of times they'll catch it themselves, which will fix it faster than if I come in there and I say, oh, you're doing that wrong, fix it. But yeah, I mean, it's just that I think that's what we really need to work on as safety people is, be there as that support system for management and the workers and that kind of stuff. It's basically I call it a Dr. Phil position in a lot of jobs that you're doing as a safety person. You're trying to make sure that somebody learns that they're doing something wrong or they need to correct what they're doing, yet you don't want to hurt their feelings or make them feel bad and that kind of stuff. So it's that whole working relationship that we have to build as a safety person.
Yeah, well, if you build a wall instead of a bridge, for lack, I'm not just throwing that one out there. It's the name of the podcast. But if you build a wall instead of a bridge, then you literally create a bigger hazard later.
Yeah.
And you touched on something that it's just more and more. I hear it every time from all these great safety professionals. Is it's a service industry. We're there to serve. So
Yeah.
how can you best serve these people? So that's great. Thank you for that, Rob.
Well, and you got to remember, Dan, if those people aren't there working, they don't need us. Those projects aren't going on. So, we're there to work with them and work for them and get help them get what they need, provide them with the proper tools and the proper training to do their job as safe as they can.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so what advice would you have for somebody getting into your field of work? A young man or woman on their way out, what advice would you give?
Well, if they've got a little bit of field experience, the next thing I would say is, take your courses, get involved with some organization, whether it be the ACSA or you go through the university courses or that kind of stuff. There's a lot of good programs out there. Get some of that basic knowledge that you need. But the thing that come in, I always tell you, people joining our teams and that kind of stuff is when you come in, you don't know everything and come in there to learn. And always I tell people when you come to the job for the first 2 weeks to 4 weeks, just kind of float through it and kind of watch what's going on. Don't go out there thinking you're going to make a mark and change the world in one day, because so many of them come in thinking that they're going to change the world. It's, you need to find that happy medium of what's working and what do we need to change to make it better out there for them.
That's great advice. We touched a little bit on mental health earlier, and we haven't got a whole bunch of time, but how are you finding that? Obviously, we've seen more issues, but there's more awareness. So what would you give for advice in terms of people dealing with maybe somebody troubled at work? Is there programs? Would you direct them towards programs on site? Is there conversations you could have with them? How do you handle that situation? Let's say I'm working in one of your crews and I'm showing signs of maybe heavy stress or depression or something like that.
Yeah, the way that I deal with that is, I watch a lot of things at Toolbox Talks and I listen to a lot of the talk that's going on from other workers and that, and if you start to see a pattern or you see somebody you think might be having trouble, pull them to the side sometime when they're alone and just talk to them and say, hey, I notice you might be off today. Is there something going on that you need some help with? If you're dealing with big organizations, they all have programs, employee assistance programs and that kind of stuff. I think the key thing is to make sure that you don't isolate that person and make them feel like there's something wrong with them. Everybody has something going on in their life. Some people just know how to handle it and put it on the back burner. Some people it comes to the forefront and, you need to help them out because if their mind is on other stuff, their mind isn't on the safety game that you're playing. And, You really need their mind on what they're doing, their task, and that kind of stuff. So that's the approach that I always tell people. Don't bring somebody up in front of everybody to embarrass them, but find out what's going on. And a lot of times it's just the person needs someone to talk to.
That's awesome advice. Thank you, Rob. That's great. One more question for you. Well, actually, two more. What three? Do you have kids?
Yes, I do.
How old are they now?
I've got a daughter that's 36 and a son that's 34.
Wonderful. Before they left your house, before they moved out on their own, if they're out, sometimes at that age they're not out yet. What three rules did you want them to follow? If you could have told them, or if you or maybe you did tell them, like what three rules from your life of experience? Maybe something your dad and mom said. Maybe your own stuff. What three rules would you have them follow?
I always told them to make sure that they try their best and put their best effort forward no matter what it is. And at the end of the day, that'll always help you out. Then I always told them to respect people. When you're going to work for somebody, respect that person. They're offering you a job and they're giving you a livelihood, and that's part of what the world's made up of and how things go. So you need to respect that person and things like that. And then I told them, never lie. If there's something going on, be truthful. That way you don't have to try to dig yourself out later when, you have an issue or something. So I've got, two great kids. They're very successful. I've got a good wife that supported us all the way through. And, my wife's put up with me being out of town for the last 25 years, 14 and 7, but that might be the reason we're still married too. So who knows?
That's right. Sometimes it helps.
Yeah, you never know.
Is there anything else you'd like to say to the audience?
No, I just, I think that it's really good. And, the safety has come a long ways and, there's still issues. There's still things we need to work on. But the key thing every day that we need to look at is, that we send people home the same way they came to work. We don't want to hurt somebody or have somebody removed from their family and that kind of stuff. So, as safety professionals, that's our job, is to make sure that we're trying to give them the best tools we can and the proper training to do their job. Because when you look at an incident or you follow up on incidents, 80% of the time or better, you find out that you didn't provide the proper tools, you didn't provide the proper training or something like that. It usually points back to us in the management roles. So that's something as a safety person we always have to remember.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today, Rob. It's been a real great interview.
You bet, Dan. Thanks, and I really appreciate it.